Hello, our Axis and allies loves. It's 1914 World War I, Wars of the World, straight from the nest. NATO's going to take it away.
Hello everybody, this is Nato at the Nest with the fall of 1917 of the World War I scenario. And Austria, with the Eastern Front closed because of Russia falling into a civil war, Austria just concentrated and moved everything west and attacked the Italians in northern Italy. And didn't drive them out, but did a decent amount of damage to the Italians. And that was about it for Austria. Pretty quick, simple turn for them. Germany attacked London again with the Zeppelins, did 5 points of damage, and then its submarines did 3 points in the North Atlantic line and then 3 points in the South Atlantic, so 6 total. So combined with the Zeppelin raid, it caused 11 points of damage for the British. So it's $11 that they're not going to have to spend with. And then launched an all-out attack on the Western Front to try to do as much damage and take as much ground as they can before the Americans arrive. And with the French in Lorraine, it was pretty much even. Lost as many as they killed, and didn't really gain any ground. With the British in Picardia, they almost drove the British out, reduced them to an infantry and 2 tanks. So it'll be interesting to see if England can hold on to Picardia before the Americans get there. And then once again, with the Eastern Front closed, just started moving all its armies in the east, west. And then England, it didn't attack in Picardia because it would have been suicide. The Germans outnumbered the British in Picardia by a sizable number. That was also the first attack that the Germans used their new stormtrooper on. And like I said in the last video, they get first strike, but any hits they get are taken on the enemy's artillery. So before the artillery can even shoot, any hits that they get, the opposing player has to take it on the artillery. And so that, especially with the French, that helped the Germans in Lorraine quite a bit by reducing French firepower. So back to the British. The British attacked the Ottomans in Cairo and weren't able to drive them out, and it's actually, I think, kind of a defeat for the British because they lost more than the Ottomans did. Not by much, it's like 1 or 2 difference. The first destroyer versus submarine action occurred, but unfortunately the British destroyer missed and the German submarines opted to submerge rather than retaliate to continue hitting British convoys. And then that was it for the British. The British transport returned to India, picked up troops, and is on its way back. The other British transport has come down to Madagascar to pick up more British troops, and England is just starting to mobilize its Commonwealth troops and send it to the fight with the Ottomans. As you can see, the Anzac fleet and army is continuing to head towards Africa. France, they counterattacked the Germans in Lorraine to try to take some pressure off the British. And it was pretty costly for both sides. As you can see, there's only 1 French infantry and 3 artillery left. They're going to get 5 infantry back next turn from the wounded, but see the Germans, they've lost over half of their forces in Lorraine from just this turn, so pretty costly. We'll see if the French attack actually diverts any German forces away from the British. And then the Soviets, because the Bolshevik party has taken power and the Russian Civil War has begun, the Bolsheviks moved into Oral Kursk and took that from the White Russians, or the Russians still loyal to the Tsar. And then the Soviets moved into Minsk and contested the territory. Weren't able to take it, but just the White Russian forces in Minsk represented the strongest forces the White Russians had, so the Soviets moved into there to reduce that, and also just to pin that force down so it can't move against weaker Soviet areas. And then the Soviets in what will eventually be known as Stalingrad moved south towards the Caucasus, because that's where the breadbasket of the White Russians is right now. They can take that, take the Caucasus, then it'll, in terms of production, it'll tip it into the Soviets' favor. So then, for the White Russian turn, they attacked the Soviets, counterattacked the Soviets in Minsk, and weren't able to drive the Soviets out, reduce them by a decent margin. There's only an infantry and 2 artillery left, but unable to drive them out. And then, because of factory limitations, when the Soviets took Oral Kursk, that left the White Russians with only 2 factories in their light or minor factories. So in terms of regular units, the White Russians can only put out 2 at a time right now. So because of factory limitations, the White Russians were forced to spend the rest of their money on militia, and so they plopped down militia wherever it do them some good. Then the Ottomans, they invaded Greece. They took their forces in Serbia and Bulgaria and invaded Greece, and it was fairly costly for the Ottomans. The Ottomans lost about half their invading force. The British, or the Greek forces, they lost about half of their forces too, but so we'll see what the British do about Greece, because it's going to probably need some help if it's going to stay in Entente hands. And the Ottomans also counterattacked the British in Cairo, hoping to drive them out, and they're unsuccessful. They did manage to destroy the British fighter, but as you can see, the forces are dead even right now. That Italian infantry didn't come till later, so it was dead even forces with the exception of the fighter. And then they pulled out of Romania because Romania is not in the war anymore. It signs a peace treaty with the Central Power forces, and because they were the Austrians and the Ottomans were unable to take Romania, so Romania stays independent, and the Austrians lose out on that victory point. Then, because Russia is no longer in the war, that freed up the Ottoman forces in the Kars territory to head south to fight the British. And then the Italians, they counterattacked the Austrians in northern Italy, and unable to drive them out, although came pretty close. You can see there's only 1 infantry and 2 artillery and a fighter left in northern Italy in terms of Austrian forces, so they almost drove them out, but not quite enough. And then, as you can see, the Austrians will get 5 infantry back, and those wounded will return to duty next turn. So that attack might have cost Italy, because Austria is going to have much more infantry than the Italians, but on the flip side, the Italians have much more artillery. So I guess all things considered, they're still about even in Italy. Let's see then. Japan, because they don't have anything left to do. Japan's just leasing all of its money to the Allies. And then America, it moved its fighters and tanks from Paris up into Picardia to reinforce the British to help them out. And then you can see the main American army, it's not in Spain, it's in the sea zone outside of Bordeaux, but spatial limitations, so all that's still on the transports, are not in Spain. So next turn they're going to land somewhere. Well, obviously not Bordeaux, otherwise they'd be in Bordeaux right now. But so we'll see where the Americans land next turn, and see how that large force tips the balance. See what Germany can do to counter it. And then the federal Mexican government attacked the rebels in Mexico, and it didn't go so well for the federals. They lost an infantry, and the rebels didn't lose anything, so that was a defeat for the federal government in Mexico. And that was the turn. Next turn will be the spring of 1918, and the second to last turn of the Great War. That won't be the end of the scenario, because the Russian Civil War is still ongoing, and then there'll actually be a couple more wars that pop up afterwards. So things heating up. The imminent arrival of the Americans. Something for the Central Powers to consider, maybe possibly fear. And the Ottomans, facing ever-increasing British and Commonwealth forces, so we'll see how much longer the Ottomans can hold out, because there's the potential of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's a potential of 8 British and Commonwealth units landing somewhere in the Ottoman Empire next turn. So the Ottomans are facing an ever-increasing threat from the British. So we'll see if they can hold out, and we'll see you next turn with the spring of 1918.
Hi, Axis and Allies players, and thanks for watching The Nest. Like what we're doing, go ahead and hit a squat on that like button, share it to your favorite social media. Want to see more videos just like this? Go ahead and subscribe. We'll have more coming to you right from Original Axis and Allies from Milton Bradley, Axis and Allies in 1914 by Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast, Shapeways.com, and HistoricalBoardGaming.com, where you can find all of your expansions and other pieces right there online ready for you. We'll see you next time right here, straight from the nest.